Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Nelson News Special Report. Today's topic, the power elite. Benevolent leaders or power-hungry titans, are they making cheerful robots of us all, as the late sociologist Charles Wright feared? Let us delve into this topic and find out. So, what is the power elite? This term is used to describe the most wealthy and influential people at the top levels of the three major branches of any modern society, known as the Triangle of Power. Yes, spooky, I know. These three branches are the executive, corporate, and military branches. The executive or political branch is made up of individuals whose responsibility it is to determine, execute, and enforce laws and regulations. This branch includes political leaders as well as those at the top of government branches that affect laws and regulations, such as the heads of public education or the police. The corporate branch is comprised of extremely wealthy few who own usually several large corporations. This could include people from very different fields like energy, entertainment, transportation, technology, food, construction, banking, and much more. These people have great influence due to their extreme wealth as well as their ability to manipulate the economy through their company's products and employment. This combination of wealth and power has historically given the corporate branch a strong amount of influence among the political and even military branches. The military branch is the easiest to understand, but it is important to point out that, at least in the USA, the military branch has a good deal of autonomy from the political branch. Although it is usually ultimately subservient to the political branch, the wealth, power, and size of the military branch often results in it developing a will of its own, so to speak. Now, while the questions and concerns about the power elite have been pertinent around the world for millennia, we are going to focus on how it has come to play much more recently in the United States of America. While the power elite existed in the US prior to the 1940s, World War II was the catalyst that brought them to a new level that still remains to this day. World War II pushed the size, power, and autonomy of the three branches of power elite to new extremes. During war, or any warlike crisis, decisions need to be made and actions taken quickly to be successful. It is natural that in these times the people of a nation put their trust in leaders of the military, executive, and corporate branches to make these decisions in the nation's best interests. These three infrastructures grew substantially during the war, functioning mostly in line with the common goals of the American people. But, after the war had ended, the powerful infrastructures and functional hierarchies that were created during war times remained. One concrete example of this is the Pentagon, an enormous military administrative building that was constructed during World War II to house the different branches and departments of the military. The Pentagon was successful and necessary at the time, but after the war ended, it still housed all the high-ranking military officers and received a huge budget. This allowed the Pentagon to remain essentially autarkic to this day. Since military leaders are not comprised of elected officials and now have become autonomous or bureaucratic enough that they are not under direct control of elected officials, the enormous military-industrial complex of the United States is no longer obliged to act in line with the will of the people. Within the corporate branch of the power elite, there is even less accountability. Individuals who own and operate billion-dollar companies are completely autonomous so long as they operate within the confines of the law. This usually means that these business leaders will make decisions based on what benefits their personal and financial interests, possibly at the detriment of the environment, their employees, people's health and well-being, or culture, to name a few. These corporations lobby politicians and influence society and current events to further their goals and protect their interests. One example of how this was happening even before World War II was the formation of the Associated Farmers of California Incorporated, which was largely funded and encouraged by the agricultural power elite in opposition to the strike and unionization movement of the California farmers in the 1930s. Finally, we have come to the executive/political branch. Now, surely the democratically elected politicians of the United States are servants of the people working towards the best interests of the common man, right? Well, maybe not. The practice of political lobbying has come to undermine the democratic nature of the United States politics. On one hand, accepting money from corporations and wealthy individuals puts a potential political candidate in a position where they are expected to make decisions in the interests of their funders, even if this goes against the interests of the voters. On the other hand, Having more money also means the politician will be able to spend more on his or her election campaign, which greatly increases the chance of that person winning more votes and ultimately the election. We have seen that these three branches of power elite potentially have a great deal of autonomy and influence. This can be detrimental to society in many different ways, especially if these power elite choose to operate selfishly. However, the real danger lies in the possibility of the power elite working together to undermine the will of the general people in order to consolidate their power and increase their wealth. Research has shown that centralization in social networks equals more power, and top business, political, and military leaders are the people operating in the most powerful social networks. But are the members of these different branches of power elite really working together outside of the public forum? Are they a cohesive and self-conscious group? In the world of business, it is not an uncommon practice. Key individuals in the business world will often sit on boards of many major companies, carefully directing them in order to create synergistic effects that influence the business system as a whole. This synergistic power would be exponentially multiplied if the three branches of power elite were doing something similar. So are they? Well, the debate is ongoing, and if you really want to know the truth, you'll have to ask them yourself, down at the Bohemian Grove.